Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes!
This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
He's a great guy.
Now, Ross Kaminsky on Denver's talk station, 630 KHAL.
All right, good morning. I think it's Tuesday. I'm Ross. Thank you so much for starting your day with me as always. I'm out next week, by the way. No idea what it'll be on. We were just talking about that. I'm out next week. Hey, Shannon, what was the word? Was the word thanks? I think the word is thanks this hour. Folks, text thanks because we're coming up to Thanksgiving. Text thanks to 200-200. This is the last week of this 12K a day giveaway here at iHeart. And I have not yet heard that, but it would probably take a little while, but I've not yet heard that one of my KHAL listeners has won. So please text thanks to 200-200. You'll get some information and confirmation, and standard data and message rates do apply if you are one of the dozen people in the United States of America still paying per text. But anyway, text thanks to 200-200. We got a lot to do today. There's a lot going on in the world still, as always, right? We do have some really interesting guests coming up over the course of the show. Let me give you a very, very quick rundown. An hour from now, Neil McCluskey, who heads up education research at the Cato Institute, we're going to talk about Joe Biden's insane, although not as insane as Elizabeth Warren's, but still insane plan to cancel student debt. In the 9 o'clock hour, we are going to talk with the guy who I'd have to say is my favorite political writer in America, Kevin Williamson. He writes for National Review, but when you hear this guy's life story, you will understand why he writes the way he does. He is simultaneously maybe the most erudite, intellectual, political writer I know of, up at a degree, but he writes in a style that is just so smash mouth, in your face, just, fearless, aggressive, and I just love it. And his new book, which actually in a way ties into his own personal background, his new book that I'm actually holding right here, and I'll hold it up if you're... Are we on YouTube right now? We're up on YouTube right now. If you go to youtube.com, type in Ross Kaminsky, you see me here in the studio, and I'm holding up the book. It's called Big White Ghetto. Dead broke, stone cold stupid, and high on rage in the dank woolly wilds of the, quote, real America. And, if George Will or some ivory tower academic were to go out and write a book about the big white ghetto and high on rage, that would be one thing. But when it's a guy who grew up that way, writing about people and stuff he knows about, it's a whole different thing. It's funny. I just said, like, if George Will wrote this book, it wouldn't quite have the same impact because George Will doesn't feel like a guy who knows anything about, hillbillies on OxyContin. And then as I look at the back of the book, the very first blurb by a famous person on the back of the book is by George Will. No commentator on America's current discontent matches Kevin Williamson's written pyrotechnics, which feature indignation laced with wit and information delivered with moral urgency. Yeah. Anyway, Kevin Williamson is at 9:05, and you should already go order the book called Big White Ghetto. And then this is going to be something a little different at 8:05. I've never done this before on the show. I'm going to have to be a little bit careful, I suppose, but as long as I'm upfront about it, we're going to have a guy on the show named Everett Graves. And he's not a famous guy. Maybe he will be one day. Long story short is Everett Graves runs a company that he started as a college project, much in the way that Federal Express started as a grad school project. And it's a company that is aiming to, change, significantly augment the world of online retail, the world of online shopping. And this company is one of the biggest investments I personally have ever made. I have a lot of money in this company. And I suppose there's nothing wrong with me having the dude on the show from the company that I've invested in, as long as I'm transparent up front that I've invested in it. But I invested in it because the technology and the concept is really interesting, and I believe in it. And also, he's going to give my listeners some promo codes so my listeners can get discounts if they try, the website. So we're going to do that at 8:05, just in time for all of your Black Friday kind of shopping and all your stuff going to Hanukkah and Christmas. So let's got a lot of other stuff today too. I want to start with this. CBS 4 Denver announced yesterday evening, Sean Boyd, a really excellent political reporter, by the way, one of the best in Colorado, Sean Boyd over at Channel 4, sent out a tweet last night saying, multiple sources tell me that the governor will announce a special session tomorrow afternoon. So that would be today, this afternoon. It will take place in the next couple of weeks. And Sean says the plan is to pass COVID relief bills to help individuals and small businesses. Sources tell CBS 4 the legislature will take up bills to help those most impacted by the pandemic, including employees who have been laid off and small businesses. Monday night, the governor and the House and Senate Democratic leadership, remember, they really don't need Republicans for this because Colorado voters have unwisely given one party control of this state. And, well, we're living with the ruin of it right now, giving away our electoral votes and all this kind of thing. But anyway, they released this last night. Quote, legislative leaders in the governor's office have been having productive conversations on how we can step up to help provide additional relief to Colorado businesses and hardworking families during these challenging times. Coloradans continue to wait for Congress to act, but we are committed to doing what we can as a state. What's interesting about this is that, as you know, states can't run budget deficits, right? Colorado has to have a balanced budget. So they will, whatever they're going to spend to help support or bail out or whatever it ends up looking like. And I don't think this is going to be really a Nancy Pelosi style bailout of irresponsible people. I think they are going to look to, try to help people whose unemployment situation has been a lot worse than other people's and stuff like that. I don't think they're going into this with bad intent. I'm not saying I'm going to agree with everything they do. I'm not saying I'm necessarily going to agree with anything they do, but it's important to keep in mind that states have to have balanced budgets. And that means they can't just run out and say, we want to throw out a whole bunch of helicopter money, right? If they are going to fly up the helicopter and send it around, dumping little bundles of rubber banded together $20 bills on people's heads, they're going to have to ground some other helicopter. And I wonder what that'll be. Now, going into the budget cycle recently, when the Joint Budget Committee of the state legislature, working with staffers in the governor's office and staffers in the committee has its own staff as well, a lot of budget people in state government, they looked at a lot of this stuff kind of in the heart of the pandemic and planned for a pretty massive reduction in sales tax revenue and other tax revenue. And probably property tax revenue too, although a lot of that goes to county rather than state. And it's possible, I haven't looked at these numbers yet. In fact, it's probable, given a couple of things, given how strong the real estate market has been, so there will be less reduction in county property tax receipt for the state to have to fill in. And also given that economic activity in Colorado has held up pretty well in the aggregate, right? This, I suppose, is one of those things where, a guy whose head is in the oven and feet are in the freezer, and on average, he's fine. But there are certainly parts of the economy in Colorado and elsewhere that have done really well, even better under COVID. Gun stores, just one example. The other side, movie theaters. Bars and restaurants, not as bad as movie theaters, but darn close. You get the idea. So if they overestimated how much tax revenue was going to drop, then they may end up actually, it may end up that they're actually sitting on, $100 million or something like that of money that they actually will have available to spend because they did whatever they did when planning the budget. So we'll see. I emailed the governor last night. I do not have a response from him yet because he might not want to get ahead of his own announcement. I asked him if there was anything he could tell me that I could tell you this morning. And as I say, so far today, I do not have a response, but I guess we'll find out because they're going to try to get this done this month. So we'll keep an eye on that right here in Colorado. Let's move a little bit further from Colorado. I'll go to NPR News for this headline, although you could find it in a lot of places. White House orders thousands of U.S. troops withdrawn from Afghanistan and Iraq. The White House will bring home 2,500 troops from Afghanistan and Iraq by the end of the year, against the guidance of top military officials, a drawdown order that reduces the American presence by about a third, from 4,500 to 2,500 in Afghanistan and 3,000 to 2,500 in Iraq, according to a U.S. official. Now, this is one of those things where true experts have substantive disagreements. You can find plenty of people, and in fact, I suppose most of the people who have been guests on my show who are in the national security space, like Mike Morrell or Admiral Stavridis, don't think we should reduce any more. But there are other groups out there. Defense Priorities is one of them. I read their newsletters pretty frequently, saying we should just bring them all home. And a lot of these people are, former colonels and generals and analysts themselves. I struggle with this one a lot, and I have for a long time, because on the one hand, I see the argument that if America's not there to stabilize a little bit, it's possible this stuff can get out of control a lot easier. And that's an argument for at least leaving some stuff there. And the other side is you can't control Afghanistan. And Iraq is a little bit of a different situation because that's a place that is already becoming a foothold for Iran. And if we were going to keep troops somewhere, I'd prefer to keep some in Iraq. But anyway, this is something that President Trump campaigned on. It's something he's been pushing towards for a long time. It's not really surprising. It probably does seem a little bit like President Trump is doing some things in his last weeks in office that are really designed to lock the next president, Joe Biden, I can't believe I'm even saying that, lock him in to certain policies, make certain changes more difficult, things like that. For example, if President Trump removes troops, it's a lot harder politically for Biden to send troops in than if it were the other way. If Trump added troops, and this is just a hypothetical, Trump has never talked about adding troops, but it's a lot easier politically to remove troops than to add them. That's my point. And so Trump is trying to make sure that, and probably a range of fronts, including China, that Biden can't do some things. Anyway, we'll see what happens. It's not that surprising to me. And what I think you will find, as you could see in the beginning of this NPR piece, and of course, NPR is not an outlet that's friendly to the president, but is reporters looking to play this up as a divide between the president and military leadership. And it might well be. It might well be. The bottom line is, we voted on this. We voted on it in 16. We voted on it in 20. The president campaigned on this, and he won in 16. He's still president now. This story says that peace talks between the Afghan government and the Taliban have seemingly stalled. Violent attacks have risen 50% in recent months. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, and Marine Corps General Frank McKenzie, who heads U.S. CENTCOM, Central Command, have advised that the troop reduction be pushed off to the spring. I doubt it will be. Oh, here's a story. I'm not looking at this, but I just remember reading it yesterday. So I'll mention it to you just because it kind of grabbed my attention. And I don't know if this is something that'll make its way to the president's attention. I read that the people who are in charge of maintaining the number of American troops in Syria, who were supposed to take the number of troops down to between 200 and 400 based on President Trump's orders, somehow kind of kept different people in different spots and made it look like there were 200 to 400 to keep the president happy, whereas there were actually more like 1,000 in Syria. And I don't know if that's true. I haven't seen it widely reported. But if it is, that would be really interesting. And if Trump hears about it, I would love to know how he reacts, or if that is part of the reason that he fired Mark Esper, the Secretary of Defense. My guess is that had to do with some other things, including some places where Esper pushed back on Trump a little bit a few months ago, and maybe Esper opposing some of these drawdowns. I'm just guessing. Anyway, we'll see. There's going to be some interesting foreign policy moves. Okay, one other quick thing here, and I only have 90 seconds to talk about this, which is perfect because it's all I want to talk about. It's all the time I want to talk about because it's a little bit horrifying. You may have heard, in fact, if you've listened to radio at all over the past year or so, you've certainly heard ads requesting that anybody who was sexually assaulted or sexually abused while in the Boy Scouts, as part of being in the Boy Scouts, file a case based on this big settlement that the Boy Scouts of America are involved with. And yesterday was the deadline for submitting these cases, and close to 90,000 cases were filed. Far more than people thought would be filed. The Boy Scouts said in a statement, "We're devastated by the number of lives impacted by past abuse in scouting and moved by the bravery of those who have come forward. We are heartbroken that we cannot undo their pain." And this mostly revolves around accusations of sexual assault in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, because the Boy Scouts started doing different things, vetting scoutmasters and such after that, but still very, very painful. We'll be right back.
This is Denver's Talk Station with Ross Kaminsky now. Tom Martino at 10, 630 KHOW, Denver.